Okay, everybody, welcome to the HCRC 2022 conference. And this session is Research 2 Presentations, Healthy Campus Environment Audit. And I am Yang-Li Wang, and I will be the moderator for this session. Before we get started, I just want to remind you, during the presentation, you're welcome to enter your question and using the Q&A function. And in this presentation, first let me introduce the speaker, Dr. Ann Mathews. Dr. Mathews is an associate professor of human nutrition at the University of Florida. She received her doctoral degree in health and physical activity from the University of Pittsburgh in 2008. Dr. Mathews' research goal is to discover and disseminate interventions to promote nutritious eating and prevent chronic disease. Dr. Mathews conducts community and clinical studies to promote positive lifestyle behaviors to address obesity and weight management, food insecurity, and for those at high risk for chronic disease such as cardiovascular disease, cancer, and diabetes.
It's great to be here with you guys today. All right, well, thank you again for joining us today. And I'm really excited for this session and to have feedback from you all. As Yang-Li said, I am an associate professor at the University of Florida and have been a part of the Healthy Campus Research Consortium for a number of years. And before we get started in talking about one of the biggest ongoing projects that this research consortium has taken on in the last 10 years or so, I need to give lots of credit first to Dr. Tanya Horacek. Dr. Horacek led this work for over 10 years and retired from Syracuse University just a couple of years ago. So it's been my honor to take on leading this work once she retired on behalf of the team. So as we get started, the HCRC Healthy Campus Environmental Audit, or HCEA, is a suite of audits that the team developed and has been using for a number of years. With this conference, though, we are really launching our dissemination phase for these audits and looking for partners to use these audits in their own research and practice to improve health promotion opportunities on their own campuses. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what these audits are and what they are not. We'll look briefly at some of the evidence to support use of the audits and why it's important to understand how the environment influences behaviors and understand the details of our environment that we live in and attend school in each day. We're going to use a few of the audits as examples to give you an idea of what conducting one of these audits would be and what the HCRC can do to support you in that way. So we'll look at our demographics, vending, and walkability and bikeability audits. We'll talk a little bit about our future work of the team and then hopefully get you excited about joining into some beta testing in the spring. So the purpose of the audits is really to evaluate the campus food and built environment. And so our team has developed 7 audits: campus demographics, the policy or points audit, an audit to assess the dining opportunities on a campus called FRESH, recreation services called PACES. We've adapted from NIMS stores audits, the shelf audit to assess convenience stores and other stores on and around campus, vending machines, walkability and bikeability of a college campus. And then with permission, we have adopted the NEFPAT audit to evaluate the types of foods, messaging, et cetera, in a college food pantry. So these audits really help determine the extent that a campus environment provides support for health promotion. And our ultimate goal in developing, refining, and now making available these audits is to provide that overview that someone on a college campus, a professor, an administrator, a team of students, a club, anyone could use to evaluate their own college food and built environment, and then advocate for change on their college campus themselves. So today we're going to go through a little bit about each of these audits, but we'll start with the background. So as you guys all know, making changes towards healthy habits is complicated. It's complicated at the community or campus level and very complicated at the individual level. There's so many different factors that influence our behaviors and health. This particular figure illustrates how both individual, lifestyle, and behavioral factors and environmental factors all interact and relate here in this example to weight status. But you could substitute any other outcome for weight and have a similar schematic. Each of these are not independent, but instead all work together and relate to an individual or a community's behavior. So let's look first at physical activity. So this was adapted from Jim Salas years ago, one of the fathers of the assessment of the built environment, ecological model of 4 domains of physical activity. There are a variety of factors that influence how physically active a college student may be. And here in the Healthy Campus Environmental Audit Framework, we're focused on purposeful activity or exercise, as well as active transport. So here, built environmental factors, are related to how walkable or bikeable a campus may be. So the trails, the sidewalks, the bike lanes, do they connect and make it possible for students, staff, and faculty to truly be active in their transport from home and around campus? And what's the access to recreational activities to be active? So what are the facilities like on a campus? The quality of the gym, the access to hours, equipment, and classes, the parks, the trails, and again, accessibility to these resources by students, administrators, staff, and others interacting with the college campus. And then when we look at the nutrition environment and how that influences the food environment, take a moment and think about your own food environment. So you have a home, of course, school, work environment, all where we have different opportunities to eat or not opportunities to eat, but decisions we're making, hundreds of decisions throughout the day on what we'll decide to eat. So think then about those environments and where you are on a day-to-day basis, your access to and location to convenience stores. What are the foods available in a convenience store close to you compared to a grocery store, a full-service supermarket, restaurants, whether they're fast food, sit-down dining, restaurants around you on a college campus. In addition to that, we'd have dining halls, cafeterias, maybe other restaurants, as well as vending machines. Vending machines may not be something that we think of outside of a work or a school campus, but vending machines permeate many of our college campuses still. Then think about that environment, not just what's there, but the other things that come along with the environment. Food pricing, marketing and messaging, where the foods are placed on the shelves. Are they near, what options are near the checkout station that might prompt someone to make a different food choice than they had initially planned, perhaps. All of these things affect our eating behaviors. So think about it through a lens of motivation for healthy eating, for satisfying hunger, for planning for the day, and other psychosocial factors. So when we think of a college campus, often the first thing we think of with a nutrition environment may be the dining hall. And in dining halls, there are many, many healthy options. But many dining halls, for instance, have all-you-can-eat opportunities. It's a swipe, you're in, and it's all you can eat. So while there are wonderful, beautiful, fresh fruits and vegetables, there's often free access to processed foods, desserts, sugar-sweetened beverages, etc. And in addition to those dining halls, really what's competing for our food attention on a college campus these days are restaurants, whether it be Chick-fil-A, Pod Markets, other fast food restaurants. These have taken over and really play a part in recruiting students to a college campus in changing their thoughts and perceptions of what influences our eating behaviors on a college campus. So our built environment and the work of this team in developing these audits is, again, really meant to provide a framework, an objective framework for understanding what the physical activity, recreation, and food environment is on a college campus, and how that influences health promotion and health behaviors, and how we can use this information to advocate for change. So a little bit about, what do we know from previous research of how the built environment influences health? So some of these findings are related to both students on a college campus as well as to our communities at large, that they transfer both. So fast food restaurants, essentially density to fast food restaurants in different communities, is positively related to body mass index. Food deserts are related to a decrease in overall diet quality. Density of convenience stores, restaurants near schools are also associated with lower diet quality. And then perception. How does perception of one's food environment influence how we interact with the food environment? So perception of limitations of access to fruits and vegetables then correlates with decreased intake of fruits and vegetables. So not just the environment, but the perception of the environment. And that holds true as well for perception of safety of an environment, for being physically active, sidewalks, parks, whether the safety be traffic, the safety of being a pedestrian walking on a sidewalk, riding in a bike lane, crime, for instance, in the area. Those perceptions influence how active we are. And the walkability and bikeability of our environments are related to body mass index as well. And then more specifically for how the built environment influences college students' behaviors and health, what we see through multiple published studies is that all-you-can-eat dining halls are related to some positive and negative aspects. For instance, all-you-can-eat access does tend to lead to higher intake of fruits and vegetables, but also higher intake of sugar-sweetened beverages, which ultimately then influences weight. We also see that as students move off campus and lose access to the dining halls and meal plans, that their diet quality decreases. Walkability and bikeability of campus are related to physical activity and BMI as well, and the distance of recreation facilities from the dorms affects physical activity. Here at the University of Florida, our Dean of Students office, and particularly the assessment team, has been very active in evaluating the placement of recreation facilities on campus. The University of Florida is a large university with one large recreation center, and they have been studying that to decide where to put the next recreation facility. And it's very clear that the distance a student lives from the recreation facility is inversely related to how often they visit the recreation facility. So that's an example of using that kind of data to then create a positive change to support health behaviors on a college campus. You may have seen this paper that was just published in the Frontiers of Nutrition this year by Dr. Lee et al. But it is a systematic review of how does a university food environment impact student dietary behaviors. Now, this is a systematic review, but as you can imagine, there are not thousands of studies looking at the relationship between the food environment and actual dietary behaviors of college students. But there were enough high-quality studies to conduct this study, and ultimately 11 articles were selected for inclusion. And through those 11 articles, there were three major themes or constructs that emerged that influence behaviors of college students. Number one was the food environment, followed by student perceptions of the food environment, as well as then dietary outcomes. And the bottom line conclusion from this systematic review May not be surprising, and it supports much of the work that this team has done. If you think about your own life and your own behaviors, it probably makes sense to you as well. But in a university food environment, really taste. So what's driving an individual's choice about what they eat? Taste. To my knowledge, research going back to the 1970s, taste has come out as the primary reason that people give for eating what they do in a meal-to-meal, day-to-day, year-to-year basis. So taste is absolutely paramount in the food choices of students. But that's immediately followed by the availability of food on a college campus and the price or the perceived value of that food for the price by a college student. Interestingly, the additional conclusion from this work is that many students have a misguided perception of what constitutes a healthy food. So coming back to that perception, the perception of what's available and potentially misperceptions of what really constitutes a high quality or healthy diet. So this systematic review supports the importance of the work and the importance of assessing individual college campus, certainly food and related physical activity environments, and using that information then again to support change, to promote health of college students. So what do these audits look like? What really makes up this suite of audits, and how do you use them? Well, first, let's talk a little bit about what it is and what it isn't. So these healthy campus environmental audits are not human research. And, this team has done so much human research together too that sometimes we even get confused and forget that we're not using these audits, we're not assessing individual student behaviors, but instead, again, the built environment and the food environment of a campus. So it's a comprehensive series of audits designed to determine, again, the extent of these environmental supports that can be leveraged for health promotion, to provide data to document, monitor, and advocate for changes to environmental and policies to facilitate health promotion of anyone interacting with a college campus. And they are individual audits that were developed by the team over many years, supported by evidence-based research, refined, updated, and focus on these environmental factors that influence behavior. Now here, I keep using the term a college campus. These audits absolutely could be used to evaluate the environment of a K-12 school as well. To note, when we think of the campus environmental audit, it's important first to know how we define what that environment is. Years ago, the team opted for a 1.5 mile radius from the center of your campus. Certainly, if you were conducting the audits on your campus, you could change what that might be. For a smaller school, you may not need that big of a radius, for instance, but that's the definition of what we've used as our team. So 1.5 mile radius from the center of your campus. And we are assessing the environment within that circle. So the Healthy Campus Environmental Audits, let's look briefly at a description of the 7 audits. And today, for the sake of time, I won't be talking about the NEFPAT, about the food pantry audit, but I can direct you to those trainings and certainly talk more about that offline. So first, as you go through the campus audits, if you're thinking about using them on your own campus, something to note first is that you do not have to conduct all of the audits by any means. So there are 8 audits, and we'll be developing more, but you can select what you'd like to do. So you may only want to, for instance, assess the vending machines on your campus. To do that, though, we ask everyone first to complete the campus environment demographics audit. So everyone, that's the first step after the training, is the campus demographics audit. And then you and your team from there can select which additional audits you'd like to do. But that demographic audit, we'll look at some of the information that provides today that walks you through and collecting about your campus, but essentially geographic, demographic, and environmental variables that would in part explain or relate to some of these other audit outcomes. For instance, the dining environment on a campus. If there's one dining hall versus 4 or 5 dining halls, that's going to relate to the size, for instance, of the college campus. So having that demographic information is really imperative to see how your college campus may compare to other campuses, particularly of similar sizes, as well as to be able to follow over time how your campus changes potentially. So after the demographics audit, then you've got a suite of choices, and you could do one or all of the other audits. The first is the points audit. POINTS is an acronym for Healthy Environmental Policies, Opportunities, Initiatives, and Notable Topics. It evaluates the extent and the quality of health promotion, obesity prevention policies, and interventions, pledges, and initiatives for the campus environment. The policy or points audit is conducted almost exclusively online, where some of the other audits will require you, of course, to go out and visit vending machines, visit the recreation centers, and see what's happening, see what in the number of machines that are there, what's the messaging around the food environment. But the points audit is meant to be conducted largely online. And as I walk you through some of those examples, policies typically now have a life on the university website. And so we help you find those policies, as they're not always clear and easy to find. But what are the things that a university is requiring different departments to provide for students and staff? The next is the fresh audit, the full restaurant evaluation supporting a healthy dining environment. Now, the fresh audit, instead of focusing so much on a nutrient perspective of foods, really this audit assesses the nutrition environment by evaluating descriptions of food, food preparation, as well as other supports such as messaging, having nutrition information available on site for making healthy dining decisions. The fresh audit is meant to be used for both dining halls as well as restaurants on and around the campus. And again, it can be used for fast food restaurants, sit-down restaurants, or a dining hall. The next is the PACES audit, the Physical Activity Campus Environmental Supports Audit. This audit evaluates the recreation facilities and programs on a campus. And if you think of what that might be on your own campus, that probably includes the student recreation center, for instance, but may also include trails, opportunities to rent canoes and kayaks, those kinds of things. So the full recreation services, facilities, programs, classes, and opportunities to be physically active on the college campus. The next audit is the shelf audit, the convenience store supporting healthy environment for life-promoting food is an acronym for this. And essentially this audit evaluates the presence of healthier foods and the availability and extent of other environmental supports for making healthy food purchase decisions. So the shelf audit is really, again, as I said, adapted from the NEMS store audit for large grocery stores, adapted for smaller stores that might be on campus and around a campus, such as a convenience store. Next is the vending audit. So the healthful vending audit evaluates the nutrition environment of vending machines, both beverage and snack machines. And here really using a nutrient density approach, using food labels of what's available in the vending machine, how many, for instance, sugar sweetened beverages make up the slots available in a machine, those types of details. And then lastly, the sneakers and spokes or walkability, bikeability audit, as we call it most often. This audit evaluates the safety and quality of a campus's walking and bike paths. So back to active transport as well as purposeful physical activity. So that's a brief overview of the audits themselves. So let's look now at how would you go about accessing and conducting these audits yourself. The first step is to gather a campus team. So whether that be an instructor in a class or an advisor in a club, potentially the wellness center of your campus or administrators, a student organization, whatever it might be. But the team that is organized and interested and committed to conducting the environmental audits and then reporting back to your university, to your organization of what your findings were. So once you gather your team, and again, we recommend that the team have really one person, we'll talk about that champion in just a moment, to help move things along and to keep everything organized, and to be the point person that connects with myself or someone else from the HCRC team in conducting your audit. But the team, really the role of the team, is to work together. So community-based participatory research. Why have you and your group decided that you'd like to take this on? What are your concerns? Who might be interested in hearing back about your findings? So the team gathering together, talking about the different audits, selecting which audits you'd like to conduct. And then once you've selected your audits, then the next step will be selecting your venues. For instance, vending machines. Here at the University of Florida, we have over 400 vending machines on campus. It's probably not realistic or necessary for us to audit all of the vending machines on campus, but perhaps a subset, 40 or 50 vending machines, for instance. So determining which vending machines across campus to get a good perspective, a good selection of vending machines across the campus. Again, always completing the demographics audit first. Then you'd complete the training and ideally do some practice data collection. For instance, vending machines. If your team is taking on the vending audit and you plan on collecting data on 20 plus vending machines, then you'd want to ideally practice on a few machines together as the team, whoever will be collecting that data, to talk about the audit, see if there are discrepancies and how you might answer some of the questions and talk through those so that everyone on your team is completing the audit in a similar fashion. Then implement the audit, submit your results essentially through the Qualtrics, a link that we'll provide. And then while we'll provide feedback to you based on your responses to each audit, it will be up to you somewhat to interpret the results for your campus and decide how and with who you'd like to provide your feedback. So making those recommendations to improve your campus. Now I mentioned a campus champion. The campus champion is someone that's committed to seeing the project to the end, essentially. Someone who will oversee all of the details of the audit collection at your university, at your institution. And again, ideally is that person that is in contact with myself or someone else from the HCRC team. So that could be a staff, a faculty, a graduate student, even an undergraduate student that's committed and has the time to do this. But ideally someone that's highly involved and committed to the project, to the entire process. So how do you get started? Soon, this will be openly available on a website for anyone to use. For the next few months, though, you'll need to request access from our team, either by contacting me at my work email or hcea@ufl.edu. And then the next step will be to complete the trainings. We'll look at what some of those trainings look like, what the time commitment might be for each of the trainings. But we'll provide you with a lot of trainings, an opportunity to ask questions if needed. Those trainings walk you through how to find information about your campus. Ideally then, reviewing the audit questions that you're using and responses with your team, so doing some of that practicing of data collection. Then going out and collecting your data and entering the data using the appropriate Qualtrics link, and then letting us know that you're done. So for instance, if you plan on collecting data on 20 vending machines, we won't necessarily know that. So you'll need to tell us when you're done so that we can provide the information back to you, essentially your results. So getting started in conducting your audit, in addition to a detailed PowerPoint overview for each audit, you'll also have a PDF or Word version of the survey itself that you can print out, talk through the questions with your team, practice, and then again start to enter your data using the Qualtrics survey platform. As you do some of the audits, such as the points and even dining and recreation, on occasion there are places where you'll need to enter in a URL where you found that information to document where it is. So as you know that as you're working online, just note that you'll be copying and pasting a number of URLs into the Qualtrics response boxes. And that'll serve as a great resource for you in future years of where did I get this information from? Here's my URL of where I found it. So all data will be entered into Qualtrics. For the demographics audit, really it's reasonable to work at a laptop or a computer the entire time. And again, I'm focusing a little bit on the demographics because everyone will start with the demographics audit. But it's very reasonable to enter the data directly into Qualtrics rather than printing off a PDF version necessarily. You will be copying and pasting a lot of links into that demographic audits, a lot of different URLs. For the other audits, we do really recommend, especially if you're working with a team, to print off the questions first so that you can discuss them and maybe take those out and about with you as you're collecting data. Then you can enter your data directly using a mobile device such as a phone. It's possible, or an iPad. It's easiest for most of the surveys to use a laptop or a desktop computer if possible. And remember, when you're completing your audits, the environment extends 1.5 miles from the center of campus unless you have changed that for your team. And that should capture most of the food and built environment for your campus. So really where the high traffic areas are, that's what we're interested in. All right, so let's take the next couple minutes and look at a few of the audits themselves. And really looking at the trainings for those audits will be the easiest. Okay. So let's start with the demographic audit. Again, that's the first audit that everyone will complete. This is a slide taken from the demographic training audit that gives you a little bit of kind of the background information that you'll enter first. And again, the demographic audit can be completed online. So you'll record for each audit who's collecting the data, the date, your university, where your university is, the region, and we'll guide you through how to determine responses to that. So for instance, what is the Southeast region? Is Kentucky there? Is Kentucky in the Midwest or Mid-Atlantic? Kentucky is in the Southeast region. So providing you with the trainings and exact way to find the responses to your questions. One of the primary websites that you'll use in the campus demographics audit is the National Center for Education Statistics. And throughout these audits, we've tried whenever possible to use national databases so that you can compare your university to other universities of similar sizes or other universities in your region, for instance. So the training will walk you through exactly where to go and how to find the information that you need. You'll see here in this example where to type in your name of your university, for example, University of Florida, and I'm going to select that specific, my university, and walks you through how to collect that information. Now, the demographic audit collects a variety of topics, very big, broad, sweeping topics about a college campus. This also includes criminal offense data. So again, we provide a national database where you can go and find crime statistics about your university using a website that all universities are required to report to. So again, you can compare your university to another university. Looking at broad sweeping strokes in the demographic audit of, for instance, transportation and what's the kind of the general built environment of your campus. So using here a transportation score, a walkability and a bikeability score that comes with interpretation. So for instance, if you are only conducting one or two of the food environment audits, through the demographics audit, you'll also receive some basic data about the built environment, the physical activity environment of your campus, and vice versa. Maybe you're primarily interested in the physical activity environment of your campus. Through the demographics audit, you'll also collect some basic data about the food environment. So it gives you a comprehensive look at your campus. And then let's turn to the vending audit as an example. And again, vending machines permeate many campuses. What you'll see on the left is an enumeration sheet. So through the training, you'll walk through how to document which vending machines and which locations that you're collecting data from, so that everyone that's collecting data has a clear understanding of what they're doing, how many snack vending machines, how many beverage vending machines, for instance, and assuring that you're getting a broad perspective of your campus. Similar, you're going to type in each of these audits, because they are meant to be independent. We'll have you type in some basic information, the name, first and last name of the person collecting the data, your school, the type environment, those basic information, and getting started. And then the vending audit starts with kind of an overview of each vending machine that's being included in the audit. So for instance, how many slots are there? How many slots actually have foods in them? So not just slots, but the number of foods. So that you may have 30 slots in a vending machine, but 15 of them are empty. Not that helpful when you're looking for quick food on the go, potentially. So essentially, an overview of the machine itself, and then going into the very details of the foods that are available in that vending machine. And our training will walk you through details for the vending machine and for some of the other audits, such as walkability and bikeability. For any discussion, as well as for ease of collecting data, we'll even ask you to take some pictures, whether that's for discussion, but really for vending. We ask you to upload some of the pictures, but all of this is detailed in the training. And then you can take those pictures back, look up some of the nutrition information to complete the audit back at your desk, whether it's on school or at home. So here then, back at home, you'll record in the Qualtrics survey what's actually in the vending machines. From that, then it's going to require some details, and that's why why you'll take all the images for convenience of exactly what the size is. Is it baked? Is it fried? The flavors, those kinds of things. And then for most items, because you can't access the nutrition facts label on an item that's facing forward in a vending machine, then next after that is looking up the nutrition information online and completing the survey using that nutrition label that you can find online, and walks you through pretty quickly, pretty easily, how to collect that information. And then it provides scoring for you. So that's completed for both snacks and beverages. And again, it'll be up to your team to decide exactly how many items you'd like to do. An example of healthfulness criteria here of our beverages. So score of 0, 1, or 2. Higher scores being the most healthful, but walk you through how to determine which score to give for each item. And then within the Qualtrics survey, it will score it automatically for you. In addition to that, on a vending machine, there's lots of messages generally around a vending machine. So within that audit, it also asks you to look for promotional messages, whether they be about sustainability, about energy, whatever it might be. So looking for those messages. So again, taking pictures of the vending machines from all sides to complete the audit thoroughly. And that's where you can see where it's multiple people doing these audits. Important to know what you're doing beforehand, before you go to a vending machine, talking through some of these things and making sure that your team is all working in a similar manner. The next audit to take a quick peek at is the walkability, bikeability audit, or sneakers and spokes. And Yan Lee, our moderator for the session, was really one of the key team members in putting together and updating this audit. So the walkability, bikeability audit, again, evaluates the safety and the opportunities for active transport, as well as physical activity of walking and biking on a campus. This was initially adapted from CDC's Healthier Worksite Initiative. So here, again, in preparation for conducting the walkability, bikeability audit, you'll complete a training and then make decisions about exactly how many different locations, sidewalks and bike lanes, for instance. Like vending machines, you're likely not going to evaluate every sidewalk or bike lane on your campus, but instead working together as a team to decide, okay, where are my high traffic areas? Where do I want to pick these different sidewalk or bike lane segments? How do I divide it up? And how do I collect that information? So the training will walk you through making those decisions and talking through it with your team. Next, you'll again identify those segments. And then as you go out and about, it might be that, something that looked great on a map is not reasonable to do once you're actually out and active. Maybe you've got construction completely blocking off a site, and so that construction is planned for the next year. That's what we're dealing with here at UF. Maybe you decide to go back as a team and refine a segment and pick something new. We do recommend that you have at least 5 different paths, for instance, or segments as a minimum guideline for both walkability, so for the sidewalks as well as the bike lanes if available. And again, we'll walk you through those details in the training. You can use a map. So as you prepare, we'll ask you to find your campus essentially using coordinates and in mapping out what segments that you'll be collecting your data from. Then you can drop a pin and really, electronically on a Google map, follow the instructions of what you need to do, enter the starting location on your device, and then evaluate that segment. And then within each audit, like the vending machine with the scoring of the items, for instance, here within the walkability, bikeability, you have the opportunity to manually score your own response options. And then we are working on an automated version that will hopefully be available this spring, that if you enter your data into Qualtrics, as you should, then it'll be automatically calculated for you. The scoring interpretation, as an example of what you'll get back, is the walkability, bikeability, individually as well as combined score for the segments that you evaluated, which are meant to be representative of your campus based on what segments you've selected. So from very low to very high. And then again, you can use those mean scores to compare your campus over time or to compare your campus to other campuses. Once you've completed your trainings, then for any additional questions, then contacting myself or the HCEA email to let us know that you are ready, make sure there's any final questions, and to begin your data collection. Now, what does the platform look like? So if you request access, you'd like to conduct one or more of the audits, then our current working plan is that we're housing all of the audits on a University Canvas or e-learning page that walks you through conducting training and then conducting each of the audits. So it will look something like this once you have access. So what are our next steps and where are we going from here? As these become widely available and again automated and providing a report back to you, our group's next goal is to create an index score for a campus. So rather than having just an individual audit score, having an overall healthy campus environmental audit index. And it's something that the team has been discussing but hasn't finalized yet, but hopefully within the next year, your audits together, if you were to collect them all, you could either have a food score, an built environment score, or a total index score. And so that index, based on the data that we've collected over the years, then we can see potentially how to weight each of these items. So convenience stores, dining halls, restaurants, for instance, access to farmers markets, to food pantries, how each of those influence food behaviors and support health promotion activities, creating an index for both the food environment as well as the physical activity environment. So what are the things that promote and what are the things that inhibit physically an active campus life? So join us this spring. We've been working very hard over the last year to update and automate many of the audits. And so we're looking for campuses interested in beta testing some or all of these audits, providing feedback to the group of where things could be improved for understanding, for clarity, as well as the type of feedback that you receive when you conduct your audit for your campus. So it's a scoring and the reports back. If you are interested in participating in the beta testing, then please contact me at Mathews. And please note my last name has only one T on the agenda. It had two T's, but Mathews with one T at ufl.edu. Or Annabelle Ha is a research assistant that has really been instrumental in moving much of this forward. So Annabelle Ha, AHA at ufl.edu. So I will pause there and ask for questions about the audits or interest in participating. You can email me directly.
I wonder if you can enter your contact information in the chat so everybody, if they're interested in using the tool, because they're helpful. I'm sure your group has done a great job extensively to putting these things together.
Thank you, Yanli. That's a great idea.
Maybe also Annabelle's as well.
Okay. Doing that.
And I haven't seen any questions come through the Q&A yet. I can ask a question to get us started so people can think about it and enter your question in the Q&A. So I know your group has done a great job putting the 8 tools together, and they're very helpful to evaluate the built environment on Healthy Campus. So I know for the spring, looking forward, you're inviting different campuses to use this tool for bed testing. So give timeline if people are interested in using this tool, how the timeline look like, just to give people a better sense of how long it will take, what they can expect.
Absolutely. For the beta testing, we mentioned in the beginning of really building a team together and deciding how much of your environment you'd like to assess. Here for the beta testing, initially in January, February, or really any time during the spring semester would be a great time to do the beta testing, but we should have it available within the first couple weeks of January for anyone that's interested in conducting any of the audits and trying them out yourself. We have, timeline-wise, the overall training for the campus demographics that would likely be completed by just one person, whether it's your campus champion or assigned to one individual. The training for the demographics probably takes about an hour, and then estimated time, another hour to actually collect the information, maybe 2 hours to collect the information. So total time commitment for the campus demographic, for instance, of about 3 hours once you get started. The other audits, such as walkability and bikeability, will depend a good bit on how many different people are completing the training and how many segments you select to audit for your campus. So I would, for instance, if you'd like to really do, a quality beta testing of the walkability, bikeability of a campus, then you'll probably want a team of people, maybe 5 students, for instance, working together with your campus champion, maybe a few more than that. And then I would allot, again, an hour or so for each person to complete the training on their own, probably another hour for the team to discuss and look through the audits and see what questions you might have before you go out to collect data. So a meeting after you do the trainings. And then I would allow students 1 to 2 weeks to collect that information that they'll need to get out and about onto a different area of campus. And depending on weather and all of those things, being outdoors collecting data. So one audit could be done very well within a few weeks. Maybe if you're working with a group that meets, only once a month or twice a month, for instance, a student organization, you might want to allot a little bit more time than that, unless the group is willing to meet more often. But this spring semester, we'd like to have all of our beta testing done so that we can make any suggested updates from those that are completing the beta testing and have that feedback and updates ready to go by the end of spring semester for anyone to use.
Thank you. There's another question coming through the chat. Can you share a little bit more about your experience while using the audit as a part of an undergraduate class?
Yes, as part of an undergraduate class, I really have enjoyed the audits and working with a class of students. It's something, a team project like that really creates a sense of belonging and empowerment, of assessing one's own college campus and providing that information back and discussing it together. In my experience in conducting the audits within a class, I've done this several times with a class of about 20 students as well as a class of about 40 students. And so depending on the class size, there would be that many different students assigned to the different audit teams. And it's gone incredibly well. You do need an organized teaching assistant, or at least I need an organized teaching assistant to manage something like this. And then within each audit, I would, you have your campus champion, which might be you as the instructor or a teaching assistant, and then kind of a co-champion for each audit that's leading, for instance, the vending audit or the walkability, bikeability audit of one student that's kind of leading that subcommittee almost. But it's really, in a class, a great experience for students to work together in doing.
Thank you for sharing your experience.
Absolutely. I also have, just for anyone interested, in this, I've left the title slide, as I said, that Dr. Tanya Horacek really began this work, leading the team years ago in this work. And so as part of the Get Fruit study, which I know we'll hear a good bit about throughout this conference, give you a little bit of data from some of the audits that were collected from that research study. So this was 8 different universities that participated in the project. So here we then recruited other universities to provide data on some of the audits. So the total numbers of colleges and universities that we were able to reach, 74 essentially agreed and 71 followed through. You can see then the audits that were done most often, again, the demographics, asking everyone, dining, recreation services, and policies. And then some of the information then that I mentioned you can use to see how your university might compare to others. So for instance, here is fresh dining. You can see the dining halls and cafeterias, the food environment, the supports, the messaging, the information around it. For dining halls versus fast food, as you'd expect, the dining halls having a higher overall score. But then we can also look at those same scores by geographic region, for instance, and see where there may be differences and what are those differences. I see another question in the chat. Are there plans to fold in additional audits that cover other topics? The other topics, that's a great question, Courtney. So the other topics that the team is already committed to developing over the next couple of years, the first is beyond just a food pantry, but what are the other available policies and resources to address food access and students experiencing food or nutrition insecurity? So again, beyond just a food pantry, but what are the programs, such as a swipes program where you might be donating meal swipes, for instance, as well as access to mental health counseling and services. So again, not the mental health symptoms of the students, but the access and availability of services. We have talked about, you asked specifically about reproductive health services. We've talked about that, but haven't put that as our top priority yet. Again, food and nutrition insecurity, as well as access to mental health services. We thought were most important right now for a college campus, but absolutely reproductive services as well.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, if not, let's thank you, Dr. Mathews, for your presentation. And everyone, thank you for attending this session. And the following, I think, is the breakout session, and their next session starts at 2:05 Eastern Time. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And this concludes our session for this session. And thank you.
Thank you, Yanli.